Believe it or not, but there are actually people in the world who think that you can just decide to move to a new country on a tourist visa. Like, I can't tell you how many people in my comments have told me to just move to Bulgaria, like, tomorrow. As a Canadian, I can go without a visa, like, no problem. No, sweetie, that is not how it works. I would still be a tax resident here in Canada, and I couldn't actually extend my time in Bulgaria once I am there. All of that has to be done here in Canada. But I knew that going into it. Like, I knew that with choosing Bulgaria as, you know, my new home base and actually getting the proper paperwork to make that happen, it would not be the easiest process. So that is actually what inspired this video today, where I wanted to give you guys some suggestions of places that I think would actually be great places to potentially look at moving at that have a much easier immigration process. Now, please keep in mind that this video is mainly directed at people who have a Canadian or American passport, because that is the largest majority of my audience. But before we get into today's video, one last thing that I wanted to say is that if you are thinking of moving abroad, I really can't emphasize enough how important it is to do some trial runs. Like, technically that's what I have been doing for the last 4 years, really, where I have gone to, you know, countries that I was potentially interested in moving in, and spent 1 to 3 months in every single one to really experience myself what the quality of life is like there, what the people are like, you know, the food, transport, healthcare. I think it's really important to test all of that out, you know, for yourself in person. So if you're going to be doing that and are looking for a way to stay connected and have access to data when crossing borders, I would definitely recommend using an Airlo eSIM. They are the sponsor of today's video, and if you use my code Alina3, you will get $3 off your first eSIM. I'm gonna have a link in the description. Definitely check them out. I've spoken about Airlo many times in past videos where I use them in China, I use them in Southeast Asia. And if you don't know what an eSIM is, it's basically like a digital SIM card that gives you access to over 200 countries and regions. So not only will you not have to deal with the hassle of changing out a physical SIM card every single time, but it also saves you the worry of coming home to a high roaming bill, because in this way you pick the plan that you want, you know exactly how much it's going to cost, so you're not going to get any unfortunate surprises when you come home. And there's a lot of different plans to choose from. So for example, when I'm going to be traveling Europe, they have a Eurolink eSIM, which gives you the best value for traveling Europe. There's also an Asia Link eSIM, there's a Latam Link eSIM, but if you're really going to be jumping all over the world, they also have a global eSIM called their Discover eSIM, and that gives you access to 136 different countries. So if you are planning a big move in the coming months or just doing some traveling around, I would definitely recommend using Airlo. I'm going to have a link in the description so you guys can check out their different plans, download the Airlo app, make sure you use my code Alina3 to get $3 off. Would definitely recommend them. So jumping into today's list, the first country on my list I actually have not been to, but am really curious to visit, because just recently I have heard so many people talking about this country. I feel like it's gonna be the new Mexico. You know, Mexico's not on my list, even though of course it's super popular for Canadians and Americans to move to, but I felt like let's diversify a little bit. And that country is Panama. Located in Central America, this is definitely one of the most developed countries in Latin America that, you know, is a lot safer than many places and also has a very high standard of living. It's also a very easy transition for Americans to move there because they actually use the US dollar as currency. And in general, I have just heard of so many Americans that are choosing to move there in the last couple of years. Because it is so developed, prices are then, of course, higher, especially in Panama City, but I still feel it's quite reasonable for what you get, where you can find really nice modern apartments for about $1,000 a month. Groceries cost a lot less. Public transport is supposed to be pretty good in, the main central areas of the city. And you're also very centrally located to get to anywhere in North America or anywhere in South America. Plus, you're also on the same time zone, more or less. So let's get into the actual immigration options, where first off, I do want to mention that the visa-free sort of stay, if you want to go test it out, for Americans is 180 days, which is 6 months. That is super, super generous. For Canadians, it is a little bit less. It's 90 days, 3 months, but still, plenty of time to go test it out, see if it's for you. And if you end up really liking it and want to look at the, immigration options that you have available to you, there are actually quite a few. Starting off, for the retirees, they have a pensionado visa. Overall, very straightforward from what I've heard. Gets processed in less than a month, and more or less what you have to prove is that you're getting at least $1,000 a month in your pension, which I think most Canadians and Americans easily meet that requirement. For my fellow digital nomads, there is a short stay visa for remote workers specifically that is initially given for 9 months, but that you can keep, extending for longer. And I've also heard that that's also relatively easy. There is a minimum income requirement to show that your company makes at least $36,000 a year. So of course, keep that in mind. And then for everybody else who isn't a retiree, that doesn't have, a remote sort of job, there is a golden visa available that gives you permanent residency, which is fantastic, but it does require a $300,000 investment. And I assume most people use that for real estate. So if you have that kind of capital, it's definitely a great option. But yeah, I really wanted to start off with Panama because this is a country that has now really interested me, that I would love to check out the next time that I'm in Central or South America, because from the people that I've talked to who have either visited or actually chosen to live there, they've had only good things to say. Recommendation number 2 on my list, I was actually considering moving to, but for business and logistic reasons, it wasn't the right choice for me, but it might be for you, and that is Georgia. And surprisingly enough, this is a country that actually some people can literally just decide to move to, because Canadians and Americans are able to stay 365 days visa-free. Like, yes, you will have to leave before that 365 days is up and then, come back, do the whole visa run thing if you're going to do that. But isn't that wild, guys? Like, to be able to actually have visa-free for a whole year in a country, like, wild. If you've never heard of Georgia before, it is a very beautiful country, like absolutely beautiful nature. If you love mountains, if you love the coastline, Tbilisi and Batumi look like really beautiful cities. It's literally been on my list of countries that I want to visit for the longest time. So with the very generous immigration requirements, at least for Canadians and Americans, like technically if you are a retiree, just living off of your pension, you're not doing any sort of extra work. If you are just living off of your savings, like you can also legally just live there on the visa-free sort of stay. But if you have your own remote business, like if you actually want to have tax residency in Georgia, and keep in mind, it does not have a double taxation agreement with Canada, I guess it does with the US, you will have to pay taxes there, but depending on the kind of business you have, it's really not that high. If you have any other kind of business that you want to start there, like especially in the local economy, there is a lot of entrepreneur and investor visas. So those, of course, get a little bit more complicated. There is an investor visa that if you invest at least $300,000 in real estate, you can get permanent residency. So there's a lot of different options to choose from. Like, it really is crazy that you can just move there with your savings or as a retiree, like certainly one of the easiest immigration processes if you are a Canadian or American. Number 3 on my list is a fan favorite, also one of my favorites, and that is Thailand. Who doesn't love Thailand? Like, Thailand is, in my opinion, the best country in Southeast Asia. It just has everything. The people are wonderful, the food is amazing, and the beaches, the rainforest, like Bangkok, I love it all. If I was to live in Southeast Asia, I told you guys that like Thailand would be my number one, no questions asked. But of course it comes with its downsides too. Like, if you guys didn't check out my video of why I wouldn't live in Southeast Asia, you can go check that out. But I know a lot of people absolutely love it and they're fine with living there more or less year round. And luckily, Thailand does make it fairly easy to immigrate there on a temporary sort of basis. Like, please keep in mind, if you actually want to get permanent residency or citizenship in Thailand, it is extremely difficult or very expensive. So if you're planning on moving there, really only expect that you are going to have, you know, a couple of years of residence before you have to renew again. Or if you have a lot of money, you can obviously go for, you know, the Thai Elite visa, which is very, very expensive. That will give you 20 years. But nevertheless, it's still a great option. And luckily, the immigration process, once you get it started, is fairly straightforward. So getting into the actual facts, both Canadians and Americans can enter visa-free for 30 days. But if you actually want to live there, and I'm talking at least, you know, a couple of years, the best visa ever has just come out this year, which is their DTV visa. It is their Destination Thailand visa, which is perfect for digital nomads or even somebody who wants to do some kind of like, you know, course. Like, they have options if you sign up for a Muay Thai school or a Thai cooking school. Like, they got a whole bunch of different categories that you can apply through. And I feel like the requirements are fairly reasonable, where you have to prove that you have at least the equivalent of $500,000 bought in the bank to support yourself, and also have the supporting documents, whether you run your own online business or you have, you know, applied for the certain kind of school. You do have to prove what you will be doing there. For anybody who is retired, they have a few options actually for their retirement visas, kind of depending on whether you're low income or high income. I'll put them on the screen here, but more or less you have to be over 50. You can't do any sort of work while you are in the country. And a lot of times you do have to make a fairly large bank deposit. And the last option for anybody who actually wants to live in Thailand longer term, but wants the easiest ever immigration process, we have the classic Thailand Elite visa. Before the DTV came along, this was really the way that most people I knew anyway were staying in Thailand long term, because it really is just the easiest sort of option. So the Thailand Elite visa starts at 900,000 baht for a 5-year visa to 5 million baht for a 20-year visa. So I know that is quite a bit of money, but I feel like it is a really great option if you love Thailand, you want as little hassle as possible, and you actually want to stay there, you know, longer term. Country number 4 on my list is also in Southeast Asia, and that is the Philippines. One of the primary reasons why I would suggest the Philippines over some other countries in Southeast Asia is the fact that English is so widely spoken, so it is super easy for, you know, any Canadians and Americans to not really have, you know, that language barrier as you would if you went outside of the tourist areas in any other places in Southeast Asia. But of course, the Philippines has so many other amazing things to offer that other Southeast Asian countries have as well, which is gorgeous beaches, amazing food. Obviously, the cost of living is substantially lower than in North America, and the people are just so incredibly friendly. So if you are going there as a tourist, as a Canadian or American, you do get 30 days visa free, and you can extend that for another 59. As for actual immigration processes, there are two main ways that I will mention in just a minute. But I want to preface it by saying that there's a very good chance that the Philippines will be launching a digital nomad visa this year. It was actually supposed to come out in 2024. So there's a very good chance it's actually going to come out in 2025. And that will be a much better option for any sort of remote workers. It will be a much easier entry than, the two options that I'm going to give you guys now. So just keep an eye on that if you are a remote worker. Having said that, there is the retiree sort of visa, which is their SRRV option, which is aimed at anyone who is 50 plus and has a pension of at least $1,000 a month. You will also have to make an investment of at least $20,000 in the country, but I feel like that's actually, quite reasonable. For everybody else, there is the SIRV visa, which is a special investor visa, where you do have to deposit at least $75,000 into a Filipino bank and spend that money on an eligible investment like real estate. I would think that if you're actually serious about moving to the Philippines, you probably do want to purchase real estate anyway. So, $75,000 is technically not that high of a bar compared to many other countries. And, it would give you a long-term residency permit. So overall, I feel like that is quite reasonable. And country number 5 on my list of suggestions was actually my second choice, the second option that I was considering if I didn't move to Bulgaria, and that was Albania. So I've talked many times how I think that Albania is such an underrated country, and I think it really is going to see a lot of growth in the coming years. So if you are someone who wanted, to get in before things get super, super crazy, I think it is certainly worth considering. Right now, they are not a part of the EU, so it is substantially easier to immigrate there, especially if you are a remote worker. There are a lot of different visa options to choose from depending on the kind of business you have. But if you're looking for more nature, especially if you like beaches, there's also a lot of great options in Vlore, Saranda, like the whole coastline of Albania is so underrated. Like in the summertime, it is absolutely stunning. As for actually getting residency, it is a fairly streamlined process. Especially if you are American, you lucky Americans, you actually get the same sort of process as you get in Georgia, where you get 365 days visa free. You could technically just move there tomorrow if you are a retiree or just like living off of your savings. You can literally just go. As for Canadians, we only get 90 days as a tourist, which is still, technically quite generous. So you can go there on a tourist visa to just check it out. But if you actually want to move there and have the proper kind of paperwork, they do have a retirement visa, and more or less you just have to prove that you have a pension of at least $13,000 a year. As for digital nomads, there isn't one exact visa. There's actually a lot of different types of work permits available, so you will have to kind of consult with, an immigration consultant or a lawyer to see what kind of category your business would fall into. But yeah, it was certainly a place that I was considering moving to, because the process would have been substantially easier than moving to Bulgaria. But, like I said, I still felt like Bulgaria was the best option for me. I was willing to put in the effort, but I still think that Albania is a fantastic option and really an up and coming sort of country. I'm really excited to see how things change in the coming years. So those are my suggestions, friends. Those are the top 5 places that I currently would recommend to anyone who is looking for a fairly easy immigration process, like especially if you're one of the lucky ones that qualifies for the, Georgian or Albanian 365-day visa-free period where you're a retiree or living off savings. Like, lucky you, you can actually just move there and live your best life without too much hassle. So yeah, I hope you guys found this video helpful. I would love to hear from you in the comments if you have any suggestions of any other countries who have a fairly easy immigration process. Once again, a very big thank you to Airlo for sponsoring today's video. I'm going to have a link in the description so you guys can download the Airlo app. Use my code Alina3 to get that $3 off your first eSIM. But yeah, that is this week's video, friends. I hope you found it helpful. And we'll see how things go. Obviously, if I get my Bulgarian visa in the next couple of weeks, it will be a mad rush to try and move as quickly as possible. But if I don't, there is a chance that I will just take a week or two off of posting, just because, I wasn't expecting that this immigration process was going to take so long. So I figure I may as well wait until, I get the visa to continue on with my content. So yeah, in case I don't post for the holiday season, just want to wish you guys a very Merry Christmas, Hanukkah, Happy New Year's, Happy Holidays. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. And as always, I am sending you so much love, and keep being your own kind of beautiful. Bye, guys.